So here's reality check number 1. Users are most often frustrated and confused when they're confronted with visual form that strictly reflects technical function. Okay, just because an industrial system looks like what you see here with all these mazes of myriad pipes and connectors and junctions and all sorts of stuff here doesn't mean you create the interface in the same way. So what we often see is something that follows Alan Cooper's model of implementation-centric design that comes from his amazing book called About Face, and it works like this. We have an implementation model in design. Okay, that reflects the technology. It means that what we design is solely based on function. It's usually done by engineers, for engineers. I'm being facetious, but okay, it's development centric. It's all about the underlying system. On the other side, we have what we know to be a mental model. This reflects the user's understanding of what they see, right? This is what they're used to. These are the visual cues that say, oh, okay, I think I know how to use that. In between, there's what we call a represented model, what Cooper called a represented model. That's what design and development create. Now, that creation, that design and development, that implementation, the closer it is to the user's mental model, the better the user experience is. All right? Which also means that this manifests itself in the user interface. The closer the UI decisions are to what people expect, the conventions they're used to, the visual cues that say this is how this works, the better UX is. But a lot of times, as you know, stuff falls on the other end of the scale towards the implementation model. That's how we get ourselves into trouble. So here's the critical question. Do you need to know the mechanics of how something works in order to use it? Do you need to understand how the electrical circuitry behind the dashboard on your car works, how all those things communicate to different parts of your car to deliver that information to the dashboard? Do you need to know the underlying structure of that in order to be able to use the dashboard? No, you don't. You don't need to know all the underlying stuff. So why do we follow the prescription? Because it's easier to design software that follows the implementation model. That's why. It's easy. We create a button for every function. We create a field for every input. We create a page for every single step in a transaction, right? We create a dialogue for every module of code. It's a one-to-one correlation. It makes logical sense. It's easy, okay? It's a 3-inch curb. That's how you get things that look like this, or this, or this, or this. Okay, this is pure functionality. It's designed based on pure function. There is no leap past, we need to put something on the screen that represents this. And that's all the further it goes. And that's why all the things I just showed you are very difficult to use. SharePoint, okay, I talk to a client every month about SharePoint, not the same client either. I can't even tell you how many times in my professional career that SharePoint has been the function of why I was there to help a client, because it's this massive, functionally rich beast. But even in its current incarnation, okay, which is much better design-wise and much better UX-wise, it is still very much an implementation model. There's an item on the screen for every functional element, and that's as far as it goes. It's prettier. That's about it. As users, we don't care how it works. We don't need to know. We don't want to know. Our focus is on the experience, specifically our expectation of that experience. We have a mental model that predicts the experience, that tells us what we can expect. When the UI sticks close to that mental model, use is easier. When use is easier, we buy, we download, we share, we promote, we do all the things that an organization wants us to do to bring value back to them. Okay, and again, we only do those things if they're easy and that we sense, perceive, understand that they're valuable. So here's reality check number 2. Form should be determined by success criteria, not by function, not by personal aesthetic preferences. Okay? By what constitutes success? Why will people use this? Why does that matter to them? Why will the visual cues on the screen provide the guidance and information they need to take action? We're interested in outcomes, not features. And again, when you are talking about UI design, when you are defending your UI design, these are the things you need to speak to. That's why I'm giving you all this stuff. You need to have this stuff in your arsenal so that you can communicate with those folks on the technical side, so that you can communicate with product owners and project managers and stakeholders in a language that makes sense to them. Form follows function only works in situations where something has only one function, all right? Which is true of nothing in this universe. People don't necessarily use things the way they were designed to be used. Take a look at this screwdriver on the screen, right? We all know what that's for. It's for turning a screw. But think about this for a second. What other things could you use that for? What else could you use it to do? I'm sure you thought of things like, well, I could pry a can open, or I could use it to put a hole in the wall, or I could use it, God forbid, to injure somebody. Right? There are all sorts of things that this tool will do that it wasn't designed to do. And that's because convenience trumps best practice every single time. So it's a matter of asking the right questions. What aspects of the design, features, functions, and form are critical to success? When time or resources are limited, what design trade-offs would least harm the design successes? You all know that you rarely have enough time or budget or approval in a lot of cases to do the kind of work that you need to do, right? To do design right, or to do it well. Meaning that both aesthetics and functionality, to different degrees, may have to be compromised. There are trade-offs you have to make that you must make. What visually communicates value? Form follows function might dictate, for example, that all enterprise systems should look the same, which unfortunately they often do. Or that all user interfaces should look the same despite the audience, despite the subject, despite data differences. Would you design a first-person game and a financial management app to look exactly the same? All right, no, they're two different things. Two different audiences, two different purposes, two different sets of content. Two completely different things that exist for different reasons. So reality check number 3 is that function is only a single, isolated aspect of what drives and influences form. It's only one part of the picture. It can never be the entire motivation behind designing something. And those of you who are developers, who are naturally leading from a development perspective, I want you to really read this and think about it, and think about everything we've said here. You have to make your decisions based on all the criteria of success and on all the principles that you're going to see later on in this course. Function is a small part of that.